classes.
Mm-hmm.
It's very fun.
Yeah. Is it more or less written response?
I guess it's less or the same because it's 17 questions. There's more questions like true and false, and questions should choose an option from four.
What should I focus on when studying or making notes? Like what chapters or?
Yeah, actually, it's a lot of videos. I don't know if you started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
guess
started some of the
spent
videos.
like maybe 7 hours studying.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I had trouble with the numbers, to get the numbers from the census.
Mm.
Because the website has changed.
Mm.
Both of them, census and DLS.
Okay.
So I had to like Google it. I spent a lot of time there.
And that's for sessions 4 and 5, right? The quiz.
Yeah.
I think I finished 4. Watching the videos and the assignments. I gotta start 5. So I can do that tomorrow. Back. Are you in there?
Oh, you should get this.
Really?
You should get this pages.
You good now?
Ask Dr. Foggy for this pages.
Oh yeah.
It's all about doing that.
Yeah. The way it's structured is like Should we pull up our Excel?
Yeah.
Oh, that's you. Oh wait, oh no, never mind. This is for this class. There you go, sir.
This is a new course, though.
What?
This is a new course for this?
Yep.
Yeah, you can just, the school director.
Yeah.
They'll find out. Hey, Maria, you sitting here next to me?
Well, you're saying this.
Jarvis?
Great.
30 minutes is not a long.
How are you doing?
No.
Okay, I've got 12:30, so it's time to get started. All right, pull up the spreadsheet that I sent to you via email. You should have it in your NOVA email. There's a blank version we will be modifying. You didn't get a syllabus or the handout, let me know. And once again, just pull up the spreadsheet, should look just like this.
How long ago did you send it?
I thought yesterday.
It was yesterday.
Yesterday about 2 o'clock.
Why do I have
Okay, let's see, who is here? Okay, Gayon, I think I saw you.
Is this yours?
Carlos is here.
Okay, fine. I thought it was.
Eduardo's here.
I
Jarvis,
know,
you here?
she's either one of his.
Nope, see Jarvis.
No, I don't need it.
Okay, Christina Gibbons.
Oh.
Chanel, there you are.
Just
Katarina?
open the-
Nope.
Blackboard?
Lewis is here.
It's in the
Pam's
email.
here. Dustin, you here? Michelle?
Here.
Okay. Daniel Potts? Yep.
I'm good.
Marielle is here. Kristen Zupaul, she's not here, is she? Okay. Chris, and Kenneth is over there.
Can you email this one by any chance? I didn't, for some reason I didn't. For some reason I didn't get it.
Just copy and paste.
Okay, everybody have the spreadsheet open?
Copy and paste.
wait.
No, it's hard to log in if someone else is logged in on your.
Yeah, how do you change the login? Control dot. Delete the control.
I know sometimes it takes a minute and they'll change over, but it's been a minute.
I don't see financial modeling.
Or,
You got it?
number one, I'm gonna use my computer.
Appreciate it.
All right, well, while you guys are still pulling up the spreadsheet, once again, I sent it to you via email yesterday. So once again, it should look like this. And what we're gonna be doing is kind of filling it in, talking about it as we sort of go through. So, this course, what is this course all about and how is this different from what has been done previously? So, what we decided to do was to take some of the content that we had done in Excel in the real estate finance course and the real estate investments course and push it over into this course to make this course 100% all about Excel, all about using Excel. And so, in essence, those of you that, let's say, that have already had real estate finance, you've already had real estate investment, you're going to see some similarities with the spreadsheets that we've created in those courses used in this course. But we're also going to be adding some new stuff along the way and explaining some things along the way, maybe even more so than previously was the case. And so what we're doing is basically expanding the content of the finance course and the investments course and this course. So the finance and investments course are going to be exclusively calculator-based, whereas this course is going to be exclusively Excel-based. So this course will be probably a bit more relaxed in the sense that all you really got to do is just kind of follow along, ask questions, and hopefully understand what we're doing and why we're doing what we're doing. And so a good piece of this course is really just understanding the functionality of Excel and then applying it to a wide variety of sort of real estate questions, okay? So as an example, today, the spreadsheet that you see before you is, I created this yesterday, and in essence, it is a combination of a handful of different sort of basic kind of time value of money calculator, cash flow calculator, amortization calculator, cap rate calculator, and kind of effective interest rate calculator. And what this is doing is we're going to walk through this step by step and sort of show you what are the formulas that you need to basically populate this model. So I've already created the model, I've already set it up, all the parameters, and all we're really going to do is we're going to populate every single one of the yellow cells, okay, which are basically formula cells. And we're going to talk about what the formula is, how you think about it, how you use it, so that you can then begin to sort of take information from here and then also create your own models, okay? But the idea is to kind of familiarize you with some of the different, as I said, some of the different functions and functionality of Excel. Now, at the end of today, or by the end of today, the goal is twofold. One, you will have a fully working spreadsheet, okay, with all of the appropriate formulas embedded within this model, okay? Number two, there's a 12-question quiz that you will take using the model to basically solve the questions on the quiz. Does that make sense? Okay? All it really is doing is it's verifying that you actually did what you had to do to accurately complete this, and that you just did not simply try to hard code numbers. In other words, it's my way of verifying that you actually did what we were supposed to be doing during class. Does that make sense? In other words, if you're just going to sit there and not do anything and not actually update the model as we're doing it, you're going to be screwed whenever it comes to the quiz time, okay? So the whole idea is for you to follow along, keep up with me. As you have questions, ask them. And this is going to be run, for the most part, a bit more of a kind of a lab sort of orientation. So we'll probably, I don't know, we'll see how long it takes us to get through this, see how long it takes us to get through whatever questions and issues that you've got, and then ultimately the quiz at the end, okay? Now, do I anticipate it probably taking still the full 4 hours to get through everything? Yeah, probably so. But you never know. We'll see. Okay, any questions on that? Now, if you take a look at the syllabus, and you specifically look at our sort of schedule, today we're scheduled to do overview of Microsoft Excel, time value of money and financial functions, creation of a time value of money calculator, NPV, IRR functions. And then what we're going to do, as I said, we'll take a quiz. Next week we'll do fixed rate mortgage, variable rate mortgage model. Following week, front door, back door. Next week, construction. Following week, before tax cash flow, then after tax cash flow, energy efficient building, creation of lender underwriting criteria model. So all of those are the different models that we're going to do sort of each week. So in essence, 8 weeks, 8 models, and which means that we'll also probably have 8, what I'm going to call proficiency quizzes at the end of each model. So for example, if you obviously complete the spreadsheet today, you do well on the quiz, theoretically you should be able to get 12.5% of your grade done at the end of today. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so the key is to just, once again, keep up. And if you're not keeping up and you've got questions, that's okay. Legitimate questions are fine. But we've got to obviously do what we can to kind of move through this.
In an instance where you miss class for whatever reason, is there an opportunity to make up the quiz, or?
We'll have to deal with that on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
But as a general rule, no.
Okay.
Okay? All right. Okay. Yep.
Are the quizzes usually at the end of class?
They will be at the end of class, because you can't answer them until you finish the spreadsheets. Okay. All right, everybody have the model pulled up?
No, not yet.
Okay, you need the model pulled up. I'm gonna start here in just a couple seconds.
Professor Forgy?
Yep.
Well, guys, get ready. Did you find a USB on the main computer there? On the actual lab thing? Did you see like a black USB?
I've got mine, but that's the only one.
All right, thank you. Last time I made the presentation, I left my USB.
You can use, yeah, I'm here. You can use your computer.
In the computer moment for the GIS presentation, I was the last person, so I left my USB and I had to do the final presentation without my USB. So I
You can
kept it
wait
in
for
all
it.
over.
Refresh the screen.
Oh,
I left it here, and then when the patient was due just Monday or by 6 p.m., right?
yeah.
The 10 pages or whatever it was due.
Yeah.
I came back home,
Look at
and I
it
was
now.
trying to...
Absolutely.
When I explain
Nothing.
Okay,
I went over, I wrote the-
I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So let's just sort of go through, I'm gonna kind of walk you through the, what I've set up and why I've set up what I have. All right, so this top model is simply a very basic time value of money calculator. You can do every bit of this, everything that's on the screen, you can do on a regular handheld calculator, okay, like the HP10B. And so, but what this does, it allows you to obviously see all of your inputs all at once and instantly be able to, you know, change one variable and boom, you know, it's done. So it's a lot less time consuming than, you know, once you get the model set up, than actually obviously using the financial calculator. And so specifically, what I have done is, the way to sort of think about this is in columns, okay? So this is one type of problem where you're going to be solving for the term, okay? You're solving for n, that's what's in yellow, okay? The next one, you're going to be solving for the interest rate. The next one, you're going to be solving for the present value. The next one, solving for the payment. And then the last one, solving for future value. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Okay? So, as an example, let's start off over here with the one that we are probably most accustomed to, which is solving for the payment. All right? And using the payment function in Excel. All right, so here's what you're going to do. Actually, before we do that, let's go ahead and take a look at this other line. Now, this is something that I've added to basically take into account the number of compounding periods that are set up. Now, as I have talked about in other classes, that typically with real estate, you have two different types of compounding periods. Either you're going to have monthly compounding, which is 12 times per year, or you're going to have annual compounding, which is 1 time per year. And so in this particular case, that payment per year column all the way across, the way I've got it set up right now, is just simply set up for monthly compounding, okay? Now you can change those 12s to 1 or to whatever, and it will accurately, obviously, represent that, but we're going to get to that in just a moment. But right below that is what I'm going to refer to as the total number of payments. So for example, if you've got a 30-year mortgage with 12 monthly payments, the total in would be what? 360. Does that make sense? Whereas if you have a 30-year loan with annual payments, the total in would only be 30, okay? And so what we're going to do, the first calculation, or the first set of very simple calculations, is going to be basically taking the payments per year times, in this case, the number of periods. So it's going to be basically, in that first column, equal V5 times V8, okay? Now, once you've done that, then just hit enter. Now, in this case, it's going to show up 0 because there's nothing here for n. But now, once you've got that, go down here to the bottom right-hand corner, and where it turns into a little small plus sign, you should be able to just simply drag over all the way and then release. If you've done it correctly, it should show up 360 for those remaining columns, because all it's doing is taking 12 times 30, which is 360. But in the first column, since there's not anything in the end cell, it's going to be 0, because you're multiplying basically 12 times 0 equals 0.
I got lost on the B5, B2, right? B5, B2?
B5 times what? B8.
B8.
B5 times B8. Okay, got it? Okay, moving forward.
Bring them out.
Okay, so let's go back here to cell E11, all right? Now, those of you that, just out of curiosity, and this is also probably instructive not only for me, but for everybody else in the class. On a scale from 1 to 10, how would you rate your Excel financial proficiency?
1.
Okay, and how many say they're between a 1 and a 3? Okay, how many of you would say you're between 4 and a 6? How many of you would say you're basically 7, 8, or a 9? And anybody claim that they're a 10? Okay. Good to know. So it's basically about a third, a third, a third. That's what I'm seeing out there in the audience. Okay. So those of you with obviously more Excel proficiency than the others, feel welcome to help out your neighbor. Okay? All right? Those of you that obviously, know exactly what you're doing, then this will be pretty straightforward. Okay. So let's go here to, once again, cell E11. And what we're going to do is we're going to calculate the payment for this particular set of loan information. So to do that, we start off with equal PMT, which accesses the payment function. Now in Excel, what should pop up is a nice little explanation. Now, you may not be able to read this part on the screen, but it simply says calculates the payment for a loan based on constant payments and a constant interest rate. Okay? Now, but whenever you then, after you've typed in the equal PMT and then you open up the parentheses, then it shows you here are the variables that you need to populate in order to solve for the payment. So part of what I'm going to be showing you now is just simply how you've got to put these variables in, okay? Because it's a little bit different than you do on the calculator. And there are a couple of little weird assumptions that you kind of got to deal with Excel. Nothing overly complicated, but there are just a few key things that you need to make sure that you're aware of. Now, in this situation, unlike the calculator, it does matter what order you put the variables, the reference variables in, okay? So, but the nice thing is, Excel guides you and tells you what the next variable is, what the current variable is, and that sort of thing. So in this particular case, it's popped up that the first variable that we need to put in to solve the payment is the rate, or the interest rate. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go up to that cell, which is the 10%. I'm going to click on it. Okay? Now, what that does is that's simply highlighting cell E9 as the rate for the payment. Okay, is everybody with me on this? Now, you would think you could stop there with the payment, but you can't. And the reason is because if you do, Excel is going to automatically assume every rate that's put in is an annually compounded rate, okay? So what we've got to do is we've got to make an adjustment for the number of compounding periods so that Excel can basically flip between monthly compounding, annual compounding, quarterly compounding, whatever it is. So in order to do that, what you're going to do is after the E9, you're going to hit divided by, and then you're going to go up and you're going to capture cell, in this case, E5. Now what is E5? E5 is the number of compounding periods. So all it's doing is it's saying, okay, take that 10% rate, divide it by 12 to get the appropriate monthly compounding rate. Okay, does that make sense? Okay? So once you've done that, we're done with the rate. So we can hit comma. That takes us to the next variable, which is NPER, or number of periods. Okay? Now, in this case, what we're referring to, in essence, is the total number of periods associated with this particular type of loan. Now, we can try to shortcut it if we want to and use the total N number, which in essence is what we're really doing, but my purist sort of mentality says let's go ahead and put the two variables in that are actually comprising this, which are going to be basically the N times the number of compounding periods. So in this case, you're going to do E8 times E5. Okay? Everybody with me? All you're doing is multiplying the 30 times the 12. Okay? Now, so that takes care of the number of periods. So you hit comma. Okay, so the next variable it asks for is the loan amount or the present value. So in this case, that's going to simply be the 100,000. So we click on that, cell E10. Okay? Everybody good?
Yeah.
Okay, once you've got that, that one's easy, don't have to modify it, comma. Then the future value is going to be basically, we're going to have to click over here probably on D12 and then use the arrow key because it's kind of hidden underneath everything. But it's actually cell E12. Okay?
E12?
E as in Edward, 12,
we get
for the future
D12.
value.
E12.
E12
Yeah, it's under
is the future value,
He has a good word.
comma. Then it's asking you for the type, whether it is a beginning of the period or end of the period, okay? In other words, an annuity due versus an ordinary annuity, okay? Now, for our purposes, what I've done is I've set up a separate line down here. This type 0 equals end of the period, 1 equals begin. So just click on basically cell E14. Okay? Now once you've done that,
E14?
E14. And you should be able to close the parentheses. Just double check, make sure that everything is identical. Okay? Now we should be able to hit enter. And there we go. We've got our answer. 877.57. Negative. Okay? So our payment function has been populated for the model. Is everybody good with that? Yes or no? No. Okay. Once again, those of you that are sitting around somebody, help each other out. I'll pop up the formula once again. So it just simply reads equal PMT, open parentheses, E9 divided by E5, comma, E8 times E5, comma, E10, comma, E12, comma, E14, close parentheses. Okay? How many people do not have it? Correct. Anybody? Okay, good. All right, so let's do this. Let's go to the present value column.
I had the same without the
Okay, calculate present value. I want to see if you can do it on your own, but we're going to start off just equal PV, open parentheses. Now see if you can do, pretty much it's almost the exact same thing you just did, but see if you can do it on your own.
Sorry, Dr. Forgy, can you repeat what we're doing again?
Okay, once again, what I've asked you to do, simply go to the present value column, and in the present value cell, start off with the equal PV, and then see if you can populate that cell and get the correct answer. The correct answer, if you did it correctly, $100,000. But what I just showed you to do on the previous one should be enough information for you to do this on your own.
It's in here. It's in here.
What is the type?
Type is down at the bottom.
It was B2.
Oh, yeah.
B8.
D14.
The radius. The radius divided.
Okay, once you've got it correct, raise your hand, just let me know.
How, what is it?
I don't know yet.
$100,000.
No, I got it 99,999.
Well, close enough. Just because of rounding.
8,775. 8775?
No, it should, well, hold on, let me just do it real quick. Okay, so once again, for those of you that are having a little bit of difficulty, all right, we start off with the rate, 10%. What we have to do to it? Divide it by the 12, comma, take the number of periods,
30 times 12.
times 12,
D5.
comma, payment, D11,
Comma.
comma, future value, D12, comma, and then type, D14, so 99,999.82. Okay, now you're saying, well, okay, why is it not precisely $100,000? Because of rounding. What we've done is whenever I input the actual payment amount, I put in $877.57. And while that is the actual payment, it actually has a lot of extra decimals out there that cause it to not obviously be precise. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So we got 2 of them done. All right. All right, so let's try to do the interest rate. Okay, equal rate, open parentheses. Okay, once again, see if you can put it in. This is not going to do you any good just to type in exactly what I give you. You've got to try to pick up on what I showed you before.
What is gas?
Okay, that's a good question. One of the things that Excel does is whenever it calculates rates of return, especially internal rate of return and sort of interest rates, it goes through what's referred to as an iterative process. And it plays within itself kind of like this high-low game. And it basically, to get to the actual answer, it sort of says, oh, is it 10%? No, that's too high. Is it 9%? No, that's too low. Oh, is it 9.25? No, that's too low. You know, and it plays this game in its own sort of world, and ultimately narrows it down to what it actually is. But for whatever reason, and this is a legacy issue with Excel, that basically you've got to offer it a seed number to start with. It almost doesn't matter what that seed number is. I typically use like 0.10 as like 10% and use that as the guess, but it's not going to inherently impact your answer.
You don't have to use the gas.
Okay, so in doing it, number of periods, so start off with this, 30, or B, or I'm sorry, C8 times C5, comma, payment is simply cell C11, comma, present value is cell C10, comma, future value is cell C12, comma, type is cell C14, comma, and then the guess, I'm just going to put in 0.1, close the parentheses, and hit enter. And we get 0.83. Now, why is it 0.83? Any scholars here that want to try to answer why it's 0.83? It technically is the right answer, but it's not the right answer.
Because it's in monthly.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so what do you have to do to make it annual? Multiply it times 12. All right, so go back up to what you have just put in, and at the end of all of that, type in times 12. Or actually, instead of doing times 12, no, don't do that. Do times C5. And the reason for that is that way it will adjust depending on the number of compounding periods. Okay? Boom, there we are, 10%. Okay? Make sense?
Yep.
All right? Now we've got 3 out of the 5 done. All right, let's go over here to N. Okay, if we're solving for N, we're solving for the number of periods. NPER. Okay? So again, see if you can fill out the rest. You know that the answer is going to be 30.
I got it.
I got a problem yet.
Bet you this is gonna be a teacher moment. I can bet it.
Now, whenever you initially put everything in, you get 360. Why do you get 360? Because it's monthly. So what you gotta do is that once you've got everything, just like we did on the previous one, in that case, we had to multiply it by 12, but here, we've got to divide it by 12. Then you should get 30.
You want to divide by 12 or divide by B5?
You divide by 12, or divide it by, or divide it by B5. Thank you.
There you go.
Okay? Okay? All good? Okay. Now, once again, because of rounding, and I purposely left it this way, but you sort of see that the actual total in is slightly more than 360 months with a bunch of decimals out there, and the reason is because in order to fully pay off the loan with 877.57, it's going to take just slightly more than that final month. Okay, there'll be a little bit of change left over. All right? Okay, final one. Okay, this one we're calculating the future value. Okay, see if you can put it in. And while it should be 0, it's going to be about $2 or $3 because of, once again, rounding.
That's what I got too.
This one divided, this one multiplied, we get 360.
$3.55. Okay. All right. So we've completed this first little piece of this. All right. So now what we can do? Okay, is everybody's matching up? Okay. I'm going to get to that point. Help your brethren next to you. And then let's try to see if we can play around with this a little bit.
Put it back on so we can see the
Divided by
formula.
12.
Well, no, so the first
Well, no, it's just
times
12. So then it's like
times
times
no, 39 divided by 8
F8 times
Coma bien, coma.
F11.
Multiply
10.
times 12.
No, you're good.
Coma,
Everybody got it? So we move forward? Okay, so now we're gonna do a little, for lack of better description, just sort of stress testing and make sure everything's working like it's supposed to. All right, so let's start over at the far left, and let's just say that we want to change things from being monthly to annual. And we'll see what happens. Oh, we already got a problem. So let's see what if we've done anything.
Yeah, because once you get balance, it comes out.
Is it dividing by the B5?
No, I took that out. That shouldn't affect it.
Divide by anything. Oh.
Let's just see. Test it. We're going to both of those references and see that. That doesn't do it. So what
Yeah,
did
you
we-
have B9.
What did we screw up? We've got the rate, we've got the payment, we've got the present value.
But the rate isn't.
B9 divided by
B9 divided by B5?
by B5.
No, I had that and then I took it out. Is it working on yours?
And
Yeah,
at the end,
mine's
it's times B5. After the parentheses, times
Coma
B5.
B11, B10, B12, 14.
Divided by B5, sorry.
Yeah, for whatever, is it, so it's actually working on your computer?
Yeah,
Yeah.
mine too.
Mine's
not on mine.
Mine's not working.
Oh, Excel, you're such a wonderful beast. Okay, well, the formula is correct. It should be working. I don't know why, actually, it's not working. That's an interesting thing that it's not. Yeah, so it works for anything other than interesting.
Oh, mine came the same thing as yours.
Yeah.
So you put 4 doesn't work, you put anything else working.
You see this? And then
Yeah,
you code
so
correct, the same
anything
thing,
under-
go on.
Under 12?
Under 12, it doesn't work.
Double,
That makes
same
no
thing as
sense.
this.
Okay, well, let's just leave it at 12. Skip on down to the interest. All right, so the interest rate, let's say we make it 5%, and we make the loan amount or the present value 500,000. And then for the payment, we're gonna make it
Now it's not working.
let's try 4,000.
Negative.
Negative 4,000. Let's see if that works. Okay.
Yeah, now it's not working. Yeah.
Okay, but hold on. Make sure that we put in,
Mine.
once again, 12 payments per year, 5%, 500,000 as the loan amount, but negative 4,000 for the payment. Not positive 4,000, but negative 4,000.
Now it's working.
Okay. And let's say we put in, I don't know, negative 10,000 for future value. Yep. So that changes things a little bit. 174 months. So assuming we have a balance at the end that we still have to pay off. Okay. All right, but everybody is matching all of those, yes?
Yep.
Okay, that's the main thing. All right. So I'm going to put it back to what it was, the 10%, 100,000, negative 877, 57, and then 0. Okay? Okay, so let's just see what happens if we go over here, we fool around with this one. All right, so make that one payment per year. and we change the payment amount to negative, we'll say 10,000. Okay, so just check those numbers and see if those are working. So once again, one payment per year, 100,000 still is the loan amount, but 10,000 as our singular payment.
Something is wrong in mine.
Okay, once again, make sure it's negative 10,000.
Yeah. Mine shows 111.69%.
Okay, once again, just double check, one payment per year, yes? Carlos?
No, in the second column.
One payment per year,
Yeah.
What would it
30 for the end, 100,000 for the present value, and 10,000 for the payment, negative. Okay, double check this.
The formula?
Make sure the formula is the same.
Put 10,000 here. Oh,
At the end, did you multiply by C5?
Oh, no.
Okay, that's fine. Okay? This is why we're going through this, just make sure that you're
There you go.
correct.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so just put everything back the way it was on that one. 12 and negative 877.57. Okay? Okay, so let's move over to this one. Oops. All right, let's see if we can make it. Okay, one payment per year. Let's say 20 years at 5%. And negative 500 and negative 7,000. Okay. I was going to do some random numbers there for that one, but let's just see if once again you match up. Yep.
Now that I changed back to 12, it's in 120%. But now it doesn't have.
You should make sure you divide the payment by 12. Or
Yeah.
not the payment, but the interest rate. Okay.
In the end, it's divided by 12.
In the end is divided by 12 or multiplied?
No. No, the total n is multiplied by 12, is that what we're saying?
Yeah, the formula at the end.
Okay, hold on, let's go back. Are we talking about the second column or the third column?
Can you go back?
The second column, yeah.
Okay, so this one.
Yep.
No, you don't change that.
He has 1 and 20, that's what I'm doing. Four.
No.
No?
You just have to change this one.
Oh,
This one you
that's
don't change.
It's exactly right.
This one is just equal D5 times D8.
So the 5% is not there, huh?
Question.
You don't have 5%
I have the
there?
same formula in the second column that you have.
Yeah, this you have to change. This one you don't.
Mine shows 120%. I have the same formula.
The first one is 1, the second
Okay.
is 20.
Yeah,
This
but
one is 20.
It's a formula for you. The
Oh,
first
now I
one-
see.
No,
What?
you put
That's 877.
What is it?
equal D5.
All right, so go on to the third column now. Once again, column D. All right, change the payments per year to 1, the end to 20,
Right?
interest rate to 5, payment to negative 500, and future value to negative 7,000.
It's negative 7,000.
Okay, just to see if the calculation ends up being correct for the present value of 8869.33.
6231.
It should be, I can't
No, it's
imagine
it.
what the reason would be why it would be off.
Oh, is it?
So the things that we're changing are payment per year.
Okay, we're only changing the non-yellow cells.
Right.
Okay, so we've changed the payment per year
Negative.
from 12 to 1.
Negative.
We changed the N from 30 to 20.
Right.
We changed the interest rate from 10% to 5%. And we changed the payment from negative 877.57 to negative 500. And we changed the future value from 0 to negative 7,000. That's all we changed.
Negative.
Yeah.
Okay, once again, I'm gonna
Correct.
pop the formula up here for this one just to make sure that you copied it correctly.
Yeah.
Okay? All right, so let's put it back the way it was. 12, 30, 10%, negative 877, 57,
3 hours
and 0.
times
Okay?
3 is n times 3. That's why
All right.
it's n 3 hours.
Let's go to the fourth column, or column E. Okay?
Did you change it again?
Okay, once again, change it from 12 to 1. Change the term from 30 to 15. Change the interest rate from 10 to 7%. Change the loan amount or the present value from 100,000 to 300,000. And then change the future value to negative 50,000. Let's see if everything's matching. Okay. All right, good. Okay, let's put it back the way it was. 12, 30, 10, 100, and 0. Okay, and then the final column. Okay, change it also to 1. Okay, per year. 10 years, 7%, 50,000, and negative 300. Okay. Once again, the whole purpose of doing this is just to ensure if you did do something kind of quirky or whatever, that hopefully it's not going to throw everything off. All right. So everybody matching up with that, put it back the way it was, and we move on. Okay, so let's do this. So once again, the whole idea behind this first little thing is this gives us a nice little sort of alternative to using the financial calculator to do these kind of basic kind of calculations. All right, so that if I were to give you, and I'm just going to give you one of the quiz questions. Okay. Okay, so one of the quiz questions, and so you just listen and input. Okay, assume, and you're going to be solving, I'm going to tell you, you're going to be solving for the payment. Okay, so that's going to indicate you're going to need to go over to column E. Okay, assume that you have a 15-year mortgage with a 2.75% interest rate, compounded annually. Your loan amount is $7,500,000.
7 million?
$7,500,000. Assume that the loan is paid in full by the end of term, therefore the loan balance or future value will be 0.
All right.
What is the annual payment to be made at the end of each period?
What was that interest rate?
2.75.
2.7.
Okay? So let's just sort of take a look. We said it was annual compounding. We said it was for 15 years. We said 2.75% was the interest rate. And the loan term was $7,500,000. and we said that the future value was going to be 0, and the payment is made at the end of the period, so that is obviously type 0. So the answer to that, the payment would be $616,000. So that is an actual question off the quiz. Okay, do you follow me?
Okay.
Okay.
Can you read the question again, please? Just one time so we can just hack it in there. Thank you.
Okay. Assume that you have a 15-year mortgage
Okay.
with a 2.75% interest rate, compounded annually. Your loan amount is $7,500,000.
Okay.
Assume that the loan is paid in full by the end of term, therefore the loan balance, or the future value, will be 0. What is the annual payment to be made at the end of each period? Yep.
When it says the end of term, that will fill out the total end.
In other words, there's no balance at the end of the loan. There's no outstanding balance. It's a 0 balance, or 0 future
Yeah,
balance.
I kind of figure like which variables are like on the, but the only one I didn't get was the total end.
Well,
What
you know,
statement on the question?
the total
like,
end is going to be calculated for you. All you need to know is that it's annual compounding and it's 15 years.
15 years, yeah.
Okay? Make sense? Okay, let's move forward. Everything back the way it was.
Because
So if
this
anyone
one
dares miss that question on the
times
quiz,
this one.
you may just have to ask you to leave. Okay. All right, so let's move over to the cash flow calculator. All right, and I'm going to kind of try to see if I can zoom to the whole thing here. It's not going to be pretty in the sense that the font is going to be really small, but you should be able to, I want to show you the whole thing first, and then I'll blow it up so you can actually see the numbers here in a minute. Okay, so let's explain what the cash flow calculator is. Okay, so one of the things that you can obviously do on the financial calculator is use the cash flow function, okay, which is entering basically similar, different, unusual sort of cash flows from one period to the next, and then typically you're solving for either net present value or internal rate of return, okay? What this allows us to do specifically is we can choose whether or not it's going to be annual compounding, something other than annual, or monthly. Now, I did something really basic little thing, but this is something I didn't include in the quiz, but I thought it would be kind of fun to do. If you actually go up here and you change the 1 to 12, it makes it monthly. Same thing over here. Now you're saying, how did I do that? With a simple little if-then statement, okay? So this is another thing that you should become familiar with as a little tool, okay?
Wow.
Now it looks a lot more complicated than what it really is, okay? It's not that complicated, all right? The way if-then statements work, it's, once again, it's all about logic, okay? If this is this, then do this. If it's not that, do something else. That's the way the logic works in if-then statements. So let's read what the if-then statement has. If B18 equals 1, then what we want you to do is pop up the word annual. If it is not that, then instead, if it's 12, then pop up monthly. And if it's not that, then you simply pop up other. That's all it is. It's that simple. Okay, now the beauty of if-then statements is that you can take numerical information like a credit score, or like, for example, one of the things you're going to be doing toward the end of the semester is basically doing kind of a loan sort of qualifier of sorts, and where you're going to put in a variety of different, maybe credit information about a tenant or about an investor, owner, borrower, and then using that criteria, then you're going to basically, the final solution will be approve or deny the loan, kind of thing.
Right, GPA, excellent, good.
Right, and so, and you can convert virtually anything from numerical information into textual information, or vice versa, okay? So, that, like for example, whenever all the professors, when we do grades and we got to do these stupid A+, A-, or whatever it is, all these different things, well, we can say if the grade falls between 90 to 90, whatever it is, 93, it's an A-. If it's a 94 and higher, it's an A. And automatically we'll do that kind of calculation. So the if-then statement can be used for a lot of different things. And Excel has all sorts of help functions embedded within it that show you how to use it, okay? And my advice to you would be to just start with some really simple ones, copy like this one, and just sort of play around with it a little bit, okay? I mean, it's the sort of thing that, it's only going to be through your own exploration that you're going to kind of nail it down and finally get the hang of it, okay? But don't get scared by it. Now, what you'll find in some people's spreadsheets, they will have these if-then statements that are literally a mile long with all kinds of, weird little things that it does. And it looks, as I said, it looks a lot worse than what it is. Because if you just really follow, it's just a logic train. You're just understanding the logic from one step to the next. If it satisfies this criteria, then do this. If it satisfies this criteria, then do this, and so forth, so on. Okay? Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, now, that was kind of a sidelight. Okay, so, up here, let's say that we want to do this on an annual basis, this first column on an annual basis, and maybe the second column on a monthly basis. Now, what you do when you're putting in the information is we always start with time period 0, because the assumption is we're going to make an expenditure, and this model, this is the way we've set it up, is we make an expenditure at time period 0, followed by the actual income streams for the property over however many months or however many years. Now, in this particular case, I limited it, not for any good reason other than I just didn't feel like that, that it was really all that beneficial to go beyond 15. But this lets us either do 15 years or 15 months, okay? Now, you can obviously make it as long as you want. It could be literally hundreds of months or hundreds of years, quite frankly. But, most of the calculations we're going to be doing, chances are it's going to be, just a few months or whatever. Okay, so in the first instance of the annual, you got a $10,000 expenditure at time period 0, followed by $3,000 payments for 5 years, okay? And so the calculations that we're going to do down here, we're going to calculate internal rate of return, and we're going to calculate the net present value using the discount rate that we've supplied here. So we can change, obviously, this to any percent we want, but the parts that we need to fill in terms of the formulas are going to be within these yellow cells. Does that make sense, everybody? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. So let's start here with IRR. Okay. So equal, oops, IRR, open parentheses. This one's pretty simple. Values, comma, guess. So another one of those guess things, okay? Well, the values piece is really simple. All we do is we go up here, we take the first cell, and we drag down, and I want you to drag down all the way to basically B36. So B21 colon B36. So that way you're capturing everything. Because if you only capture the piece that we've got there currently, then if you all of a sudden you have one that's longer than that, it's not going to work. Okay? Okay? So after that, comma, and then for the guess, kind of like I did before, 0.1. Now, What that, well, let's go ahead and do it real quick. Okay, we get the correct answer, 15.24, all right? But, let's leave it there for a second. Now let's go up and let's change this to monthly. Oh, it didn't change. Well, why? Because we didn't adjust it, okay? So we need to adjust this for it being monthly. So we're going to need to multiply it by cell B18. There we go.
Professor Forgy, can you explain that guess again, that 0.1?
Yeah, it's kind of meaningless. As I said, it's really more of an Excel legacy thing that at some point, whenever the original programmers were coming up with Excel, the only way they can calculate a rate of return, because it's not just an absolutely simple formula that you apply, it's a bit more of an iterative process that you've got to, as I said, that the computer has to play almost like a high-low game and ultimately isolate what the actual number is. And so it's just simply what's called a seed value of just a starting point for Excel to begin to play the high-low game.
Okay, so that 0.1 is not 10%.
No, it is, but it's not. I mean, it is in the sense that's the value that we're giving it, but it's really meaningless.
Okay.
And you're gonna use it every
I do. I mean, most part, it's always going to work for our purposes. Okay. So once again, let me blow this up a little bit. Okay. So once again, here's the formula. Okay. All right. Now, what you should be able to do is simply copy, just drag it over. It'll save you from having to type it in again. Okay, and then it should make the adjustments to, obviously, to the column C. Okay? All right?
Yes.
Now,
click here and here.
all right.
Here and here.
The NPV, which is simply taking each individual cash flow, discounting them by the discount rate, and then taking and subtracting out the initial cash outflow. This is one of the quirky things in Excel, okay? So it's a little bit more complicated than the internal rate of return function. I'll show you what I mean by that. Okay. So you're going to do equal NPV, open parentheses, and then you're first of all going to take the rate, and then you're going to divide that by the number of,
12.
in this case, cell B18. You don't want to just type in a hard-coded 12, because what if you change it to 1?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's the reason why we've got that there. Okay, comma. Okay, now, it asks for the values. This is where it's totally different than the internal rate of return. This is where people invariably get screwed up. So please make sure you're paying attention. All right, with the NPV, the first cell that you capture is not time period 0. The first cell that you capture is time period 1. Okay? So we go down. Well, B22. We can actually scroll down.
B36,
Okay. To B36. Okay? Now, we're going to close the parentheses. We're not quite done, but we're gonna go ahead and just close parentheses, just to see what number it gives us. Okay, it gives us 14,814.31. Yep.
Why has a green triangle in the corner?
Because it's an inconsistent sort of reference. So just kind of ignore that for the time being, okay? Now, what we're gonna do is, and I'll explain this, I'm gonna actually work through an example of this, but what I want you to do is, at the end of that, do plus cell B21, which is the outflow. Okay, so that gives us our actual answer. Now,
Plus 21?
okay, hold on. Okay, I'm gonna make that look like annual on that. All right, here's what I want you to do. Okay, everybody, this is the annual number. I went up and changed it from monthly to annual, and so your return should be 15.24, and the discount rate should be 29.88. And I think that is hopefully consistent. Yeah, that's consistent with what I gave you on the handout, okay? Just as a check figure. All right, here's what I want you to do. This is just for your own benefit. Most all of you, if not all of you, have your financial calculators, okay? What I want you to do is just simply to prove to yourself that it's the same thing. All you're going to be doing is you're going to, in the calculator, you're going to have one payment per year, and then for the calculator, you're going to put in the initial cash outflow, which was what? $10,000, yes? So you're going to put in 10,000 plus minus as cash flow. Then you're going to put in 3,000 as a cash flow. And we can actually do a shortcut here, and because the 3,000 occurs how many times? 5. So we can use 5 shift. Now this is critical. It is not in, it is in sub J, which is on the calculator below the cash flow key. So you're actually, that's why you're hitting 5 shift in sub J, which is accessed below the cash flow key. So everybody see that on our calculator. Now all that's doing is just simply saying, put in that $3,000 5 times. Okay? Then, shift internal rate of return for the year, and you should match with the 15.24. Okay? All right? I'm just showing you how to basically do the same exact thing on the calculator. All right? Then, for the net present value,
Yeah, 15.24.
you're going to put in 5% as your interest rate, and then you're going to simply solve for net present value. Not present value, but net present value, which is, once again, that is underneath the PRC key. All right? And you should hopefully match up with the 29.8843. Yes? Okay, good. All right. So the whole purpose of that was just simply to show you that's how you can do it on the calculator versus doing it in Excel. Okay? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So once you've got that one correct, once again, you should be able to do the same thing we did above. Simply go over at the bottom right corner of that, drag it over. All right, so let's just go up and just double check that one, make sure we're on the same page. We've got it set up as 12 payments per year, so it's monthly. So each of those cash flows are considered to be monthly. I didn't change anything in terms of the numbers, so it should be the same numbers on your sheet. So 140.67 is our internal rate of return. 52.36.56 should be our NPV. All right, matching up? Okay, good. All right, so instead of speeding past this real quick, let's just kind of talk about a few other little things. Okay. So, let's just sort of look. We know that the left one, in essence, we're just going to kind of zero these out. All right. So let's just sort of pick some numbers here for a second. We can also change the obviously initial cash outflow. So how much we want our property to be worth? In other words, how much will you spend on it? Give me a dollar amount.
$1 million.
$1 million. Okay, so negative $1 million. All right. So our cash flows off of that. Now, so let's think about this for a second. These are annual cash flows. So basically, 10% of $1 million would be $100,000 a year. Okay. So in order, if we wanted to throw off something greater than a 10% rate of return, we've got to have something at least around $100,000 a year. So what number do we want to potentially put in there?
150.
150,000. So that gives us a 15% rate of return if we went all the way down. But let's just go with 150 for that first year. Okay? But now the key thing to sort of take note of is it's going to be a loss until we obviously fully recoup the amount that we initially invested. Okay? So let's see how long we've got to put in 150,000 for before we get a positive return. Oops. Okay, so we've gone 5 years and we still have a negative return. So it looks like
9 years.
Oops. After 7 years, we get a slightly positive return of a 1.23%. Okay, but our discount rate, which is our sort of hurdle rate, if we will, we're not meeting that. So, I mean, while we are getting a positive return, we're not meeting our threshold return of the 5%. So, in order to meet our threshold return, we're probably going to have to go at least maybe another year or two. So let's just see. So yeah, so 9 years, we get a 6.46% overall return and a 5% basically discount rate, and that gives us a $66,000 profit above and beyond our hurdle rate of the 5%. Does that make sense? Okay. So this is just one way you can continue to use this. So it's just, you know, a way of kind of like determining like a payback period of sorts. Okay. You know, how many years would it take me at this level of income to potentially pay back my initial investment and generate the potential rate of return that I want to generate? Okay, does that make sense? Because a lot of investment funds specify and say, look, we demand a 15% rate of return on our equity, okay? And if that's the case and you know what the cash flows are going to be, is it possible to achieve that? You know, and how long will it take for that to occur? Okay?
So,
all right. Yep.
Like looking at an equation like this, like how would you kind of word that, so, in your own sense? Right? Like, so let's say you're putting this together and
I mean, I would word it simple as this. I would say, look, assume that you spent $1 million on a building and it generated $150,000 for the next 9 years. Calculate the internal rate of return and calculate the net present value using a 5% discount rate. Pretty straightforward. Okay? All right, so let's do the one on the right-hand side, which is monthly. Okay, what dollar amount we want to spend there?
1.5.
Okay.
this still monthly?
This one is monthly, but we can make it annual, either way. All right, so currently it's monthly, I believe. Yep, still monthly. All right, so if it's monthly, and we want to basically do this no longer than a year, just sort of think about it like this. So $1.5 million divided by 12 months, $125,000 a month would pay us back over 12 months, but wouldn't give us any sort of rate of return. Okay? But let's just say, okay, well, let's do 100,000. What the heck? So it generates 100,000. We get all the way down to month 12, and I'm going to show you something. Okay, there we got all the way down to month 12, and if you think about it, that would be what, 1.2 million that we recaptured, yes? Okay, $100,000 a month for 12 months would be 1.2 million. We spent 1.5 million, so clearly it doesn't make any sense. Now the question would be, this would be kind of a fun thing for you to figure out, is assume in that final month we can sell it. How much would we have to sell it for in order to break even with our discount rate of 5%? In other words, what dollar amount would we have to insert in month 12 to get our NPV to be 0?
331.
300,000.
Okay, let's just see. Not quite. So we'll say 400,000. Not quite.
447.
450,000.
Yeah, it'd be up to.
Okay, so we're getting really close. Okay, so somewhere between 448,000 and 449,000 appears to be where the crossover point occurs. Okay, now all that, the whole purpose of that is just simply, for us to be able to sort of say, okay, we've got a property, it's generated this amount of revenue over the past year, we know we want to sell it at the end of the year, how much do we have to sell it for in order to meet our base threshold of the 5% rate of return? Does that make sense? Okay, it's just another way of flipping the question, okay? All right. Everybody feel pretty comfortable with that? Yes, no, possibly could be? Okay, good.
Question?
Yep.
The $100,000 amounts, is that still the annual amount that you're paying, or is that?
No, this is monthly.
So that's just every month you're paying $100,000?
That is correct. That is correct. And at the end of the 12th month, you're basically the 100,000 plus an additional, if you will, 349,000. All right? Okay, moving forward.
And most of the times you're getting a discount rate based off the market, right?
Correct. And we can talk more about that here in just a second. All right, the next one we'll talk about is the cap rate calculator. Probably the easiest one on here, but also extremely valuable. This one couldn't be more simple. It's pretty much just multiplication and division, okay? No heavy-duty formulas, all right? So this is in essence nothing more than our good old friend Earth, all right? So we've got our income divided by our cap rate gives us value, okay? Now, so what we're basically saying is, all right, if we're given any of the two variables, solve for the third, all right? So in the case of a value of $100,000 and a cap rate or rate of return of 10%, what would be our income? Well, there we simply take value times rate, or 100,000 times 10%, and you're going to get $10,000 as your income. Does that make sense? Okay? So, in order to do that, what are you going to do? Equal that times that. Boom, done. Can you handle that? Okay.
Yes.
Now see if you can do it for the other two. For the rate and for the value. You know what the answer is going to be, or you should, well, pretty close.
You don't put the
Okay? So for the rate, what are we going to do?
15,000 divided by 100,000?
There you go. Okay. So, cell C45 divided by cell C47.
Multiply by 100?
Boom, done. Okay. All right. The last one, the value. What are we going to do there?
10,000 divided by 20%?
That is correct. 10,000 divided by 20%. Boom, done. Okay. Now the purpose of doing that simple one was, as I've said before, ERV is probably the most fundamental formula and set of relationships for commercial property. And so at the most basic, you need to understand that very simple interrelationship. That, for example, we have a property, it's generating, $15,000 a year, and the current value is $100,000, then yeah, that means the cap rate is 15%. But what happens if all of a sudden the income declines to, let's say, $9,000? Well, now the cap rate is 9%. Okay? You can begin to see, as one goes up, does the other one go down? Does it, what happens? Okay? Or if the value is, let's say, 500,000, with that amount of income, you've got a paltry cap rate of 1.8. Now, what we have seen, obviously in the market over the past, 10, 15 years is what? A decline, for the most part, in cap rates. Okay? Well, what does that mean? I mean, if you really sort of think about it, that means assuming the income of the property is kept constant, okay, just follow me on this, assuming income is kept constant and the cap rate is falling, what is that doing to values? Making them go up, go down, or stay the same?
Down.
It's increasing the value of the properties.
See, this shows you don't understand. Okay? If cap rates are going down and income is staying constant, that means values are going up. Okay? Many of you said their values were going down. No. I mean, look at it. Let's do what I just said. We have, let's say, the income staying constant at $10,000, all right? And actually, let's just use this. Yeah, we'll go do this. Okay. So, in the case of this one, we go from 500,000 to 100,000, cap rate is going up, okay? So in that case, once again, value declining, cap rate goes up, okay? Cap rate go down, in this case, we go from a 10% cap rate to a 5% cap rate with the value staying the same, our income is going down, okay? We go over here, which is what I was discussing earlier, we have a cap rate that was, let's say, 20%, it goes down to 10%, the value of the property jumps up to $100,000. Let's say the cap rate goes down from 10% to 5%. The value of that property now is $200,000. Okay, so you basically, I mean, here's the thing that, and I'm sure Dustin can probably give us even more accurate numbers on this, but let's just say 10 years ago, the average cap rate was what? Ballpark.
10 years
On
ago,
a
7-8%.
commercial, like office building, shopping center sort of thing.
7-8%.
Okay, and now it's roughly,
5.
okay,
5.
so let's just say 7% to 5%. Let's just say, what sort of change would that have, all right? So we go over here, we put in 7%. Okay, so it was 7% on a property that's generating $10,000 a year in income. That's what it was, okay? Now, several years later, that same property, new cap rate of 5%, all of a sudden, we're saying the property is worth more. But the income hasn't changed. The property is still generating the same amount of income. So what's happening there? Why is that happening? Well, one reason is we've got cheaper sources of capital. Because what has the Federal Reserve been doing for the past however many years? Keeping interest rates ridiculously, artificially low. Okay? What are they beginning to do with interest rates? Beginning to raise them. Okay? Therefore, what's probably going to happen to real estate prices? You're probably going to have higher cap rates, which means lower values. Okay? It only follows. It's very basic economics. All right? So my point is, that's why this is so important, is that, you know, understanding that simple relationship is fundamental to understanding basically what's going on in the market. But if you understand what cap rates are doing, you understand whether or not the fundamental income the property is generating is going up or down, or the values per square foot are going up and down, then you can kind of get a good sense of what's really taking place within the market. Make sense?
So is that the number one like source to changing cap rate? Or the
What?
feds, like the sources?
I would say it's one of the factors, because there are obviously other sources of capital other than traditional lenders. But the point being is you've got a lot of different sources of capital chasing after all sorts of deals. And as a result, that low cost of lending is driving down the cap rates. It has driven down the cap rates to almost historic lows. I mean, you know, for many years, you know, I started teaching in 1988, okay, so almost 30 years ago. And whenever I first started teaching, it was pretty clear cap rates, you almost automatically assume, were 10% for most property types, okay? And before that, you know, cap rates were in many cases estimated to be 12 or 15%, you know, back in the early 80s, late 70s. So, you know, there has been a fairly consistent decline of cap rates over time, but part of it is attributed to we probably better understand what's going on in the market, we have maybe less volatility in the market, we, you know, a lot more relevant, useful market information. But the point being is we still have to understand that those cap rates are what drive value, you know, and the reason, you know, once again, you know, they're called capitalization rates because it is the rate at which a project will attract capital. And so, you know, depending on the product type, depending on the risk, depending on the market that it's in, all of that's going to influence and drive what that actual cap rate is, in addition to the cost of funds associated with that particular property type. Okay? Questions, thoughts, observations? Okay. All right. Okay. So look over here. Yep. All right, let me zoom out a little bit. Okay, so this next one that I came up with, let me try to enhance it a little bit here.
Where's that?
Okay, is a loan amortization calculator. Okay, now those of you that already have me for finance, this is pretty straightforward. Those of you that are just now in my finance class, this is new. And we haven't talked about loan amortization yet, but we're going to talk about it a little bit here. So one of the things that you put together, typically, you know, not only as a borrower, but as a lender, you're going to put together a loan amortization schedule, which is simply, okay, here's how much you borrowed, here is your first month's principal payment, your first month's interest payment, the total payment, and then ultimately kind of the ending balance for that first month. And you're going to do that literally for every single month of the loan, okay? So you can see how much of the loan you've paid off each month and how much you still owe. Does that make sense conceptually? Yes or no? Okay, we'll work through an example of that here in a second. But also, what you may want to know for any particular given time during the loan is how much interest that you've paid over a particular given time range, how much principal that you've paid over a certain time range, and how much you've, in total, those two combined, have paid, and then what the balance is at that point in time. Now, the particular example that I gave you on the handout specifically is starting with month number 1, finishing in month 180, or 15 years. Okay, 15 times 12 is 180. Now, the information that is used here, if you take a look right underneath loan amortization calculator, what does it say?
Using PMT.
Using PMT column numbers. That means this column right